So I had the perfect space under a window to make a built-in reading bench. It's also a great space to add some storage cabinets below, and to make it extra comfortable, I used a piece of leather to upholster the seat. I used a single sheet of construction plywood and started by cutting out all my pieces using the table saw and miter saw. I was actually short a few pieces, so I glued up some scrap plywood to make up larger pieces for the base of each cabinet. I built the two outer cabinets first by gluing and nailing the sides to the base, then used some 3-inch strips of plywood to support the top. Each unit is about 2 feet wide and about 18 inches off the ground, with a 3-inch gap between the floor and the bottom of the cabinet. With the sides attached to the base, I added two 3-inch strips across the top of each cabinet to eventually support the seat. Once the first unit was assembled, I pre-drilled and screwed everything in place for some extra strength and support. Once the two outer units were completed, I joined them together using the base piece and the top supports of the middle unit. If I had a bit more plywood left, I would have built 3 individual units and screwed them together. It would have been much stronger that way. Once the entire base unit was done, I focused on upholstering the seat. I used a beige leather hide that was just big enough for the seat. I assembled all of the pieces face down on the workbench to make it easier to staple everything together. I placed the leather upside down, then a layer of 1/2-inch foam batting, followed by a piece of 2-inch foam, and then the plywood on top. The 2-inch foam was cut to the exact size of the plywood seat. I stapled some scrap foam to the ends of the plywood since my 1/2-inch batting just wasn't long enough. I made these temporary supports to clamp the plywood to my workbench. This compresses all of the foam layers to make it easier to staple the batting and the leather to the plywood. I folded the 1/2-inch batting over the plywood and stapled it in place around the perimeter of the seat, pulling it tightly as I went along. I trimmed off all the excess foam, then did the same with the layer of leather. Once the supports are unclamped and the foam is decompressed, you're left with a nice firm seat cushion. With the seat finished, I started working on the cabinet doors. I cut 3-inch strips out of MDF and used the table saw to cut out a rabbet for the back panel to slide in. At the same time, I cut out a 1/2 lap to join the frame of the doors together. With a bit of glue, I stapled the frame of the doors together. You can see here how the half lap joins the frame together. On the back side, I glued in a piece of 1/4-inch hardboard that was left over from my miter saw station. I stapled it into place and set it aside for the glue to dry. With all 3 doors complete, I started working on the kick plate. I marked out 3 rows and drilled out some holes every inch. There are 2 sections of holes, one on each end of the kick plate. They're actually for airflow since this bench is over a heating register. Once all the holes were drilled, I went over them with a larger drill bit and chamfered the edges. Now to attach the kick plate to the bench, I'm attaching a 2-inch strip of plywood on the back side that will slide into the gap between the floor and the bench. This way I'll be able to easily unscrew it if I ever need to access under the bench. With all my pieces assembled, I applied the first of 3 coats of white paint before installing it into place. I slid the kick plate into place, and I drove in a few screws from inside the cabinet to secure it into place. I located the studs in the wall and secured the bench to the wall using 3-inch construction screws. Then I gave it a second coat of white paint. While the paint dried, I installed the hinges for the cabinet doors. Using a Forstner bit, I drilled out a hole in the cabinet where the hinge would fit and secured them into place with the screws provided. Once that was done, I secured the doors to the cabinets and made any adjustments using the adjustment screws to align all the doors to each other. I then marked the center of each door about 1.5 inches from the edge, pre-drilled a hole, and screwed in the handle. The only thing left was to attach the seat to the cabinet. I used 1 1/4-inch screws and screwed the seat to the cabinet from below. Added a few decorative pillows, and the reading bench is finished. Let me know what you think about this project in the comments below. I have a few other videos you might also like to watch, and of course, don't forget to subscribe.